Ethan Hale lived in the kind of house that people barely noticed. A modest two-story home on Elm Street, its beige siding faded by years of sun, neatly trimmed hedges, and a single oak tree swaying in the front yard. To anyone glancing over the picket fence, he was just another quiet neighbor. He waved politely, mowed the lawn on Saturday mornings, and avoided unnecessary conversation. People didn't think twice about him, and that was exactly how he liked it. Ethan had been watching the street for years, not in a criminal way, he told himself. It was careful observation, a fascination with patterns, routines, small details most overlooked. Who left their porch light on, who brought the garbage cans in late, who jogged in the morning, and what route they took. He recorded these things meticulously in a small leather-bound notebook, filling pages with dates, times, and tiny observations. The neighbors would have called it eccentric. He called it necessary. And now there was someone new. Lena Morris had moved into the house across the street just last week, single, mid-30s, with a quiet energy that radiated independence. She carried boxes up the walkway herself, humming softly to herself. Ethan watched, noting the angle of her movements, the rhythm of her steps. She didn't see him. She never did. She couldn't. For the first few days, he simply observed. She unpacked boxes, hung curtains, adjusted lamps. Her world was small and predictable, but as the days passed, Ethan's curiosity grew. He learned her schedule, the time she took her morning jog, when she stepped out to get the mail, how she leaned against her kitchen counter when she made coffee. Every detail mattered. Every detail was recorded. It started with small things. Packages disappeared from her porch. A mailbox flag dropped when she wasn't looking. One evening, a shadow flickered in the corner of her living room window, fleeting and easy to dismiss, but Ethan's eyes lingered, watching her reaction. She froze, glanced around nervously, but shrugged it off. No one else would know. No one else would notice. Ethan's notebook began to grow thicker. He didn't just record times and dates anymore. He sketched her movements, her gestures, her expressions when she thought she was alone. He cataloged her phone habits, when she checked her messages, when she ignored calls. Every tiny nuance became part of a larger puzzle that only he could see. Neighbors occasionally waved. A cheerful, "Hello, Ethan," from the woman 2 houses down, a nod from the mailman. He responded with the same polite gestures, the same calm smile. Nobody suspected a thing, and why would they? He was the quiet man, the one who watched the street from behind the curtains, a fixture so ordinary that he became invisible. It was late one evening when the first real warning appeared. Lena had just returned from the grocery store, bags in hand, humming softly. As she stepped inside, Ethan noticed movement in the reflection of her window, a fleeting shadow in the living room. She froze, her eyes darting to the window, then looked around. There was no one there. She shrugged it off, murmuring to herself about just my imagination. Ethan made a note. Shadow. Observed 7:42 p.m. Reaction, startled, hesitant glance, no follow-up. But it wasn't imagination, not really. Ethan had left the porch light on deliberately, casting shadows across her living room that mimicked a presence. He wanted to see her reactions, wanted to gauge fear, uncertainty. It was a game to him, a test. Over the next few days, the incidents escalated subtly. Her packages began arriving opened, letters shifted from her mailbox. Once a note appeared on her doorstep. "I see you." No signature, no clue, just those 3 words. Lena picked it up, frowned, glanced around the empty street, then stuffed it into her purse. She didn't tell anyone. Who would believe her? Ethan watched from behind the curtains as she held the note, her fingers trembling slightly. He wrote it down. Note found. Reaction, confused, slight nervousness, no action taken. Then came the photograph. It wasn't in the mail. It wasn't slid under her door. It was taped to her front door, full size, glossy, and unmistakably of her. She stared at it, heart racing, recognizing herself instantly. It was taken from inside her own house, the angle revealing the living room, the sofa where she often sat, and the corner where she kept her coffee table. Every detail captured, every shadow, every item in its place. Lena's mind raced. How? How could someone have taken this photo without her seeing her? Her first instinct was disbelief, then fear, and finally icy dread. She backed away, pressing herself against the door, her eyes scanning every window, every darkened corner of her home. And then, as always, Ethan watched. He sat in the darkness behind his curtains, notebook in hand, scribbling notes with precise care. Photo placed on door, angle verified, subject startled, stress response observed, elevated heart rate, rapid movement, retreat. He didn't smile, not yet. He didn't gloat, that would come later. For now, he simply watched, measured, and waited. That night, Lena couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house, every whisper of the wind made her tense. She checked the locks, windows, doors. Every entry point was secure, and yet she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, of being studied, of being hunted. Ethan, meanwhile, traced her movements from behind his window, noting every flicker of fear, every glance over the shoulder. It was exhilarating, it was satisfying, it was dangerous, and he loved it. By the end of the week, Lena's unease had grown into obsession. She started leaving lights on in unusual patterns, locking doors twice, checking the windows repeatedly. But Ethan knew her patterns better than she knew them herself. Every adjustment she made, he anticipated, watched, and cataloged. The stage was set. The predator had been identified, the prey had been spotted, and the quiet man on Elm Street had begun his game. Nobody suspected him, not the neighbors, not the police, not Lena. And that, Ethan thought as he closed his notebook for the night, is exactly how it should be.
The day Lena Morris disappeared began like any other. The sky was overcast, the wind whispering through the trees along Elm Street, bending branches like slow-motion hands. Neighbors moved about their morning routines, oblivious to the quiet storm about to hit their street. Ethan Hale observed from behind his curtains, notebook open, coffee in hand. He noted the small details he always did, the exact time Mrs. Warner left for her yoga class, the route Mr. Delgado jogged along the park, the pattern of cars that passed their street. But today, all his attention was on Lena. She stepped outside, carrying her grocery bags to the kitchen, humming softly. She didn't see the van parked across the street. Ethan had placed it there the night before, leaving the engine off, a shadow among shadows. By mid-morning, she was gone. Her car sat neatly in the driveway, phone charging on the counter. All signs pointed to her being somewhere she shouldn't have been. Panic set in. Her friends called repeatedly. Her neighbors whispered. But no one knew the truth yet. She had been taken. Detective Marcus Reed received the call that afternoon, a single line of text from a concerned friend. Lena hasn't been seen. Something's wrong. Reed's instincts immediately triggered. The case wasn't just another missing person, it carried a weight of something darker. He arrived on Elm Street in his unmarked car, eyes scanning. He noted the oddness immediately, the curtains drawn tightly in some houses, the faint scent of air freshener in others, masking the scent of something overlooked. He approached Lena's home cautiously. The door was locked, no signs of forced entry, no immediate evidence. He knocked, no answer. He noticed her mailbox flagged down, just as Ethan had planned it. Reed looked at it, puzzled, then glanced across the street at Ethan's house. Ethan appeared calm, serene even, polite, the kind of man who waved, nodded, and smiled. "Where was she last seen?" Reed asked the neighbors, jotting down notes in his small leather notebook. She just went out yesterday morning, a neighbor stammered. Left her car here, came back, and then she was gone. I don't know, it's weird. Reed's gut told him it wasn't weird, it was deliberate. Ethan stepped forward. I can help, he said, his voice calm, almost soothing. I have security cameras. You're welcome to review them. I'd hate for something unpleasant to happen in this neighborhood. Reed hesitated, but he accepted. The footage Ethan provided showed Lena leaving the house, walking to her car, but nothing else. Nothing to indicate her disappearance. Ethan smiled faintly, a polite smile. He said, I hope that helps. But Reed didn't know, and no one suspected, that Ethan had already erased critical minutes of footage before turning it over. Every small detail that could expose him was gone, leaving a seamless, innocent narrative. As Reed delved deeper, patterns began to emerge. 3 women from nearby towns had vanished under remarkably similar circumstances, all single, all living alone, all last seen walking outside their homes or in their neighborhoods. All were within Ethan's reach, all within his invisible map of the city. Meanwhile, Lena woke up to darkness. Her head throbbed. She was in a confined, unfamiliar space. The air was damp, faintly smelling of mildew and cleaning chemicals. Her hands shook as she touched the walls, discovering the rough texture of concrete and the faint outlines of support beams. Panic surged. She tried the door, locked, no handle, no windows, only shadows stretching along the walls, mocking her. Ethan watched her from cameras he had installed in the room, not for cruelty, at least not entirely, but for study. Every reaction she made was logged meticulously in his second notebook: fear levels, body movements, attempts to escape, breathing patterns. He whispered to himself occasionally, noting small points of interest. Outside, Detective Reed continued his investigation. He interviewed neighbors, checked security cameras from surrounding streets, analyzed traffic patterns. Something didn't fit. Lena's disappearance was precise, almost surgical. But no one could see what Reed couldn't: Ethan's careful orchestration. The storage unit was next. Ethan had rented it under the alias of M. Harlow, a name that existed on paper but nowhere else. Inside, rows of lockers stretched endlessly, sterile, silent, except for one that contained his secret. Lena sat inside it, huddled, a thin blanket draped over her shoulders. Her eyes traced messages she had scratched into the concrete walls, hoping someone would see. The notebook that Ethan maintained outside her room mirrored her panic. He observed her terror like a scientist observing a specimen. Her pulse, her hesitation, the exact moments she stopped moving, every detail was captured. The tension escalated when Reed discovered the storage unit. He drove past it, noting the bland structure, its bland metal doors. Surveillance cameras on the property picked up nothing unusual, but Reed's intuition screamed that this was a critical piece of the puzzle. Inside, Lena discovered a hidden vent in the corner. It was small, insufficient for a full escape, but enough to see a sliver of daylight beyond. She pressed her eye to it, watching shadows move. She realized that someone could be watching her right now. Her stomach churned. She understood with terrifying clarity that she wasn't just captured, she was studied, cataloged, observed. Ethan, sitting in his car a few blocks away, scribbled in his notebook: subject alert, reaction, notices vent, anxiety elevated, no further action, observation continues. As night fell, the city outside carried on unawares. Reed, driven and relentless, began connecting the dots between Lena and the other missing women. He didn't yet know the scale of Ethan's obsession. He didn't know that the man smiling politely across the street, the man everyone waved at, was the same man orchestrating the disappearances. Inside the storage unit, Lena's desperation reached a breaking point. She tried shouting, banging on the walls, listening for any sound of movement. Silence. Then a soft hum from the ventilation, a whisper of air that was not quite natural. She froze. Someone was there, watching, waiting. And somewhere else, behind drawn curtains on Elm Street, Ethan closed his notebook, satisfied with the day's observations. The predator and the prey had moved further along in their deadly dance. Part 2 ends with the chilling realization Ethan is not just stalking Lena, he's orchestrating every move, anticipating every reaction, and nobody, not even the police, suspects him.
Detective Marcus Reed had been working around the clock, piecing together Lena Morris's disappearance. Each lead, each witness, each scrap of surveillance footage pointed to a pattern, but the pattern was maddeningly elusive. The missing women all lived alone, all vanished without a trace, all in neighborhoods familiar to someone who watched with quiet, deliberate intent. Ethan Hale remained calm, the perfect picture of suburban normalcy. He greeted neighbors, mowed his lawn, and waved politely to Reed during his brief visits to the neighborhood. Inside, however, his mind was a maze of calculations. Every detail, every contingency, every escape route had been plotted. From his vantage point behind drawn curtains, Ethan observed Reed inspecting the street, taking notes, asking questions. He could see the subtle cues of Reed's thought process, the pause here, the glance there, the slight furrowing of his brow. Ethan jotted it all down in his notebook. He was always one step ahead. He had to be. Meanwhile, Lena's ordeal inside the storage unit reached a critical point. She had been locked away for days, subsisting on the small amount of food Ethan provided with cold precision. Her body ached, but her mind raced. She had studied the room thoroughly. Every crack, every vent, every irregularity in the walls had been catalogued. She knew she couldn't wait for rescue. She had to act. Ethan, oblivious to her determination, continued his ritual. Each day he would enter the storage unit, observe her from hidden cameras, and take meticulous notes. His obsession wasn't just control, it was study. He wasn't cruel for cruelty's sake, he was meticulous, he was methodical. In a brief flashback, Reed discovered Ethan's background, former private security contractor, highly skilled in surveillance, digital countermeasures, and tracking. Reed realized immediately why the cases had gone cold before. Ethan had the tools and knowledge to erase evidence, manipulate cameras, and anticipate investigative moves. Reed's team began setting traps, surveillance on his home, background checks, cross-referencing rental records for storage units. Every clue pointed to someone intelligent, calculating, and terrifyingly meticulous. But they didn't yet know where Lena was, or even that she was alive. Inside the storage unit, Lena discovered something chilling. A second notebook, left in a corner, filled with sketches and photographs of women, some still, some blurred in fear. Each page was labeled with notes, patterns, behaviors, schedules, reactions. Her stomach turned. Ethan hadn't just been watching her, he had been cataloging countless women in a sinister archive of obsession. Lena's panic fueled her determination. She had found a vent leading to a maintenance shaft, too narrow for full escape, but enough to peek outside. Through the thin metal slats, she saw shadows moving beyond the unit, the faint glow of streetlights in the distance. Someone could come, someone might already be watching. Ethan sensed a shift. In his house, he studied Lena's latest reactions through the surveillance feeds. Her movements had become sharper, more deliberate, more resistant. She was fighting back. He noted the change, intrigued. Subject adapting, stress levels rising, countermeasures noted. Reed's investigation intensified. Surveillance cameras from surrounding blocks captured a man frequently entering a nearby storage facility. The footage was grainy, but Reed's instincts screamed that the man was important. Every detail, every movement, every second counted. He was closing in, and Ethan knew it. For the first time, Reed felt the hunter and the prey flip. Ethan began leaving subtle messages, testing the investigation's limits. Anonymous tips, minor red herrings, and carefully manipulated surveillance footage created a maze of confusion. Reed's frustration grew. Someone was always watching his moves, anticipating them. Inside the unit, Lena worked feverishly. She pushed her strength to the limit, pulling at loose panels, testing locks, and leaving marks to track her own progress. She whispered to herself, reciting every escape plan, every observation Ethan had missed. She wasn't just a victim, she was learning to anticipate him, just as he had anticipated her. Ethan, however, wasn't reckless. He calculated every possible reaction she could have. He had contingency plans for days, for weeks, for months. Lena's resourcefulness fascinated him, but it also frustrated him. He liked order. He liked control. She was beginning to disrupt it. Reed, sensing the final pieces falling into place, began mapping Ethan's movements, his habits, and his likely hideouts. Every small detail, every predictable routine became crucial. The detective realized that Ethan wasn't just a predator, he was a strategist. He had been building a network of observation, silently watching, silently cataloging, silently planning. The tension escalated one evening when Lena discovered a hidden cache of keys and tools. She realized Ethan underestimated her determination. She could free herself, but timing was everything. A wrong move could trigger Ethan's response immediately. Back at Ethan's house, the predator prepared for the final act. Reed's surveillance had narrowed down the possibilities. The net was closing. He sensed it, just as he had sensed Lena's adaptability. His mind raced through possibilities, outcomes, contingencies. Everything depended on precision. Everything depended on timing. As night fell, Lena made her move. She carefully used the tools she had discovered, loosening panels, unscrewing small vents, and slipping through into the narrow maintenance shaft. Every second was measured, every movement precise. She was the hunted, but she was also learning to fight back. Ethan watched. Every detail of her escape attempt was recorded. He wasn't angry, he was fascinated. He had seen few people respond like this, and it intrigued him. But fascination wouldn't protect him if Reed's team intervened. Reed, working from the shadows, coordinated with his team. They had traced the storage unit, observed Ethan's vehicles, and were closing in. Every moment counted. He knew Ethan's skills. He knew Ethan's mind. He knew he had to act decisively. The stage was set for confrontation. The predator and the prey were both adapting, evolving, and anticipating. Ethan had the upper hand in skill and knowledge. Lena had the will to survive. Reed had the determination to catch the predator before another life was lost. Part 3 ends with Lena halfway through the maintenance shaft, Ethan realizing the police are closing in, and Reed's team preparing to strike. The tension is palpable. Every heartbeat counts. Every shadow hides a possibility. The hunters are about to be the hunted, and the final act is inevitable.
The night was thick with fog, curling through the streets like ghostly fingers. Elm Street, quiet for weeks under the illusion of normalcy, now felt electric, charged with anticipation, danger, and inevitability. Detective Marcus Reed parked his unmarked car a block away from the storage facility. Every instinct in his body screamed that the moment had arrived. Every piece of evidence, every subtle pattern, every grainy surveillance clip pointed here. Inside the storage unit, Lena Morris crawled through the maintenance shaft. Her hands scraped against metal and concrete, her breath ragged but determined. The faint glow of emergency lights from the facility beyond the shaft guided her forward. For hours, she had planned, observed, and memorized Ethan's routines, and now, inch by inch, she moved closer to freedom. Ethan Hale watched her through the surveillance feeds in his house a few miles away. His mind was calm, analytical. Every second of her escape attempt had been anticipated. He scribbled in his notebook, noting her movements, every hesitation, every improvised adjustment. But as he studied her, a ripple of unease ran through him. Something was different tonight. She wasn't reacting predictably. She was learning. Meanwhile, Reed's team had moved into position.
Officers concealed in the shadows, tactical gear ready, radios murmuring in low tones. Reed's eyes scanned a facility, mapping every exit, every potential threat. His gaze lingered on the nondescript doors behind which Lena might be trapped. He knew Ethan's skills, and he knew that approaching recklessly would only endanger Lena further. Inside the shaft, Lena paused. She had reached a vent cover slightly ajar, leading into a hallway of the storage facility itself. She pushed it open slowly, careful to avoid triggering any noise that could alert Ethan. A sliver of light fell across her face, highlighting the fear, but also the resolve in her eyes. At that moment, Ethan realized that the police were closing in. He didn't see them yet, but the shift in patterns, the unusual vehicle movement, the faint irregularities in digital signals, it all screamed intrusion. For the first time, he felt the pressure of imperfection. He grabbed his jacket and drove silently toward the storage facility, his mind running through every possible contingency. Every step Lena had taken had been predictable, but tonight there were too many variables. Reed's team moved. The first officer reached the main corridor leading to Lena's cell. Every shadow could hide a trap. Every corner could conceal Ethan's next move. Reed motioned for silence. He could hear the faint hum of electricity, the distant echo of Lena's movements, and the almost imperceptible sounds of Ethan's approach. Then Lena appeared at the end of the corridor, just as a faint creak sounded behind her. She froze. Ethan stepped into the hallway, calm, methodical, his eyes locking on hers. A predator confronted by the prey who had finally found courage. "Going somewhere?" Ethan's voice was smooth, unflinching. A smile barely touched his lips, but it carried an unnerving weight. Lena backed up instinctively, scanning for options. The vent she had crawled through offered no escape now. She was trapped between the predator and the unknown shadows ahead. Detective Reed stepped forward from the darkness, his hand on his service weapon. "Step away from her, Hale. It's over." Ethan's eyes flickered toward Reed, calculating. He had anticipated this confrontation, prepared for every contingency, but Reed's team had moved faster than expected. The tension snapped like a wire. For a tense moment, nothing moved. Lena's chest heaved. Reed's hand stayed steady on the gun. Ethan's mind raced, silently running through the possibilities, the sequences, the outcomes. Then, as suddenly as the tension had built, Lena made a move. She grabbed a metal pipe from the hallway floor, swinging it instinctively, catching Ethan slightly off guard. He staggered backward, surprised by the sudden aggression. Her desperation was raw, her survival instinct stronger than fear. Reed's team closed in, surrounding Ethan from both sides. "Drop it," Reed barked, his voice cutting through the haze. Ethan's calm demeanor cracked for the first time. His hands trembled slightly, not with fear, but with the thrill of challenge. He had studied countless reactions, but Lena's had been unpredictable. For a moment, he paused, caught between fascination and strategy. Then the inevitable happened. Reed moved forward decisively, disarming Ethan and forcing him to the ground. Officers cuffed him swiftly. Lena collapsed against the wall, shaking, exhausted, but alive. Ethan looked up at her, a faint, chilling smile on his lips. "You never really see monsters, you just live next to them." Lena's eyes widened, horror and relief mingling. Reed's heart pounded, adrenaline coursing through his veins, but he stayed alert. Ethan's words carried a weight that was undeniable. He had been living in plain sight, orchestrating terror without ever being suspected. The aftermath was immediate. Lena was escorted out of the storage unit, trembling but safe. Reed's team began processing the scene, collecting Ethan's notebooks, photographs, and surveillance equipment. The scale of his obsession became clear. Years of meticulous cataloging, planning, and studying women who lived alone. It was horrifying in scope. Ethan, calm again now, watched as everything he had built was dismantled. His notebooks, his files, his carefully structured world, all being carried away as evidence. Yet in his mind, he was already planning. Observation never ended, cataloging never ended. Even behind bars, some darkness could not be contained. And somewhere deep in her mind, Lena knew the truth. Monsters like Ethan don't just vanish. They linger in shadows, invisible, waiting for the next mistake, the next opening. But she also knew that she had survived, and survival, she realized, could be more powerful than fear. Part 4 ends with the chilling reality. Ethan is caught, but his mind remains dangerous. The predator has been subdued, yet the lessons of observation, patience, and hidden menace linger, an unsettling reminder that sometimes the most terrifying monsters live in plain sight.